I need to tell you something about the word no that nobody tells you when they're teaching you to be nice, accommodating, and likable. Something that changes everything about how you see yourself, your relationships, and your life. Something that, if you understand it, will show you why you're exhausted, resentful, and living for everyone except yourself. The word no is the most powerful word you can learn to say, and your inability to say it is destroying your life. Right now, you probably say yes when you mean no. You agree to things you don't want to do. You take on responsibilities you don't have capacity for. You accommodate others' needs while ignoring your own. You say yes to invitations, requests, demands, and expectations, not because you want to, but because you can't bring yourself to say no. And you tell yourself this is being a good person, being helpful, being kind, being generous, being a team player, being a good friend, partner, employee, family member. You tell yourself that saying yes to everyone else is the right thing to do, that boundaries are selfish, that saying no makes you difficult or uncaring or problematic. But what you're actually doing is destroying yourself, slowly, consistently. Every yes when you mean no is a betrayal of yourself. Every accommodation of others at your expense is an abandonment of your own needs. Every time you sacrifice your time, energy, or well-being because you can't say no, you're teaching people that your needs don't matter, and eventually you believe it too. Think about your life right now. How many things are you doing that you don't want to do? How many commitments have you made that drain you? How many people are taking from you because you never say no? How much of your time and energy goes to others' priorities instead of your own? And how do you feel? Resentful, exhausted, overwhelmed, trapped, like your life isn't your own, like you're living for everyone except yourself? Like you've lost yourself completely in meeting everyone else's needs? That feeling isn't because you're doing too much. That feeling is because you're doing too much for others and too little for yourself, because you have no boundaries, because you can't say no, because you've built a life where everyone else's needs come before yours, and that's not sustainable. Most people live entire lives this way, never saying no, never setting boundaries, constantly accommodating, adjusting, sacrificing, compromising, building resentment, losing themselves, becoming bitter about the very generosity they can't stop performing, and wondering why being such a good person makes them feel so terrible. But here's what they don't realize. Boundaries aren't selfish. Boundaries are essential. Saying no isn't being difficult, it's being honest. Protecting your time, energy, and well-being isn't self-centered. It's self-preservation. And people who respect boundaries are the only people worth having in your life. People who need you to have no boundaries are using you. The word no is complete. It's a full sentence. It doesn't require justification, explanation, or apology. No is an answer. And learning to say it clearly, firmly, without guilt will transform your life more than any other skill you can develop. My name doesn't matter, but my boundaries do. Because I spent 34 years unable to say no, unable to set boundaries, living completely for others, until I learned. Every yes when I meant no was killing me, and learning to say no, learning to set boundaries, saved my life and transformed everything. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how lack of boundaries is destroying your life right now. I'm going to reveal why you can't say no and what that inability is costing you. I'm going to share how I learned to set boundaries and what changed when I did. And most importantly, I'm going to give you the exact framework to start saying no and setting boundaries that protect your life. But I need you to be ready for something uncomfortable. Setting boundaries means disappointing people, means being seen as difficult, means losing relationships that were built on your boundarylessness, means prioritizing yourself when you've been taught that's selfish, that's scary. Are you ready for that discomfort? Are you ready to start saying no? Are you ready to set boundaries? Then let's begin. Because boundaries aren't optional, they're essential. And learning to say no isn't selfish, it's survival. Let me take you to the moment I realized my inability to say no was destroying me. I was 34 years old, sitting in my car after yet another commitment I'd agreed to, despite not wanting to, crying from exhaustion and resentment. The commitment: organizing my friend's baby shower. I'd said yes when she asked, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't say no. I was already overwhelmed. I had work deadlines, family obligations, my own life to manage. But when she asked, my automatic response was, of course, I'd love to. I didn't love to, I didn't want to, I didn't have time. But I said yes, because that's what I always did. And now I was drowning in planning tasks for an event I didn't want to organize, while my own needs went completely unmet. Sitting in my car, I realized this is my entire life. Saying yes when I mean no, taking on things I don't want to do, accommodating everyone except myself, living for others, and I'm dying inside from it. Let me show you the specific ways my lack of boundaries had destroyed my life, because these are the same ways lack of boundaries is destroying yours right now. Boundary-less pattern 1, automatic yes to all requests. Anytime anyone asked me for anything, help, time, favors, commitments, my automatic response was yes. I didn't evaluate whether I had capacity. I didn't check if I wanted to. I didn't consider my own needs. I just said yes, automatically, reflexively. Coworker asks me to take on extra project? Yes. Friend asks me to help them move? Yes. Family member asks me to host holiday dinner? Yes. Acquaintance asks me to volunteer for their cause? Yes. Every request received automatic yes, regardless of my capacity, desires, or needs. This automatic yes meant my life was completely full of other people's priorities. My schedule was everyone else's to-do list. My time belonged to whoever asked for it. My life wasn't mine. It was on loan to everyone who said, "Can you?" Boundary-less pattern 2, inability to articulate my own needs. Not only could I not say no to others, I couldn't say yes to myself. I couldn't articulate what I needed. I couldn't express what I wanted. I couldn't state my preferences or priorities. When people asked, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Whatever you want." When people asked, "What do you need?" I said, "Nothing, I'm fine." When people asked, "What can I do for you?" I said, "Don't worry about me." I couldn't articulate needs because I'd learned my needs were supposed to be invisible. This inability to articulate needs meant nobody knew what I needed because I never told them, and then I resented them for not meeting needs I never expressed. The resentment built from unexpressed, unmet needs that I couldn't even articulate. Boundary-less pattern 3, overfunctioning in all relationships. Because I had no boundaries, I overfunctioned in every relationship. I gave too much, did too much, carried too much, took responsibility for things that weren't my responsibility. In friendships, I was the one who always planned everything, checked in on everyone, remembered everyone's important dates, showed up for everyone, provided emotional support to everyone. But I never asked for support, never expected others to show up for me, never gave anyone the chance to carry their share. In work, I took on everyone's overflow, covered for colleagues constantly, stayed late to help others meet their deadlines, volunteered for tasks nobody else wanted, carried far more than my share of responsibility, because I couldn't set boundaries on what was actually my job versus what was others' work. In family, I hosted everything, planned everything, bought everyone's gifts, remembered everything, accommodated everyone. I was the one everyone relied on because I never said, "Someone else needs to do this." This overfunctioning created relationships where I gave 90% and others gave 10%, and I resented the imbalance I'd created by refusing to set boundaries. Boundary-less pattern 4, chronic people-pleasing. I prioritized keeping others happy over my own well-being. If someone was disappointed, upset, or unhappy with me, I would do anything to fix it, even if fixing it meant sacrificing my own needs completely. I avoided conflict at any cost. If setting a boundary would create conflict, I wouldn't set it. If saying no would disappoint someone, I'd say yes. If expressing my needs would upset someone, I'd stay silent. I sacrificed myself completely to maintain others' happiness and avoid their disappointment. This people-pleasing meant I was constantly performing happiness when I was miserable, performing enthusiasm when I was exhausted, performing agreement when I disagreed, performing generosity when I was depleted. My entire life was performance designed to keep others pleased. Boundary-less pattern 5, resentment accumulation. Because I said yes when I meant no, because I couldn't articulate needs, because I overfunctioned, because I people-pleased constantly, I accumulated massive resentment, not toward the people making requests, toward myself for not being able to say no. I was angry at myself constantly, angry that I'd agreed to things I didn't want to do, angry that I couldn't set boundaries, angry that I was overwhelmed and exhausted, angry that my life wasn't my own. But I directed all that anger inward. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just say no? Why am I like this? This resentment poisoned everything. I resented the people I was helping because I'd said yes when I meant no. I resented my commitments because I'd made them without boundaries. I resented my life because I'd built it without protecting myself. Boundary-less pattern 6, identity loss. With no boundaries, I lost myself completely. I didn't know what I wanted because I never practiced wanting. I didn't know what I needed because I never articulated needing. I didn't know who I was because I'd become whoever others needed me to be. I was different in every relationship. Whatever that person needed, I became supportive friend, reliable employee, accommodating family member, helpful neighbor. Every relationship got a different version of me, and none of those versions was my actual self, because I had no boundaries protecting my actual self. This identity loss left me hollow. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person looking back, because that person was just a collection of performances for others. The real me had disappeared completely under layers of accommodation. Boundary-less pattern 7, energy depletion. Without boundaries, I was constantly depleted, physically exhausted from overcommitting, emotionally drained from people-pleasing, mentally exhausted from managing everyone else's needs, spiritually empty from having no space for myself. I woke up tired. I went to bed exhausted. I had no recovery time because all my time belonged to others. I had no energy reserves because I gave everything away. I was running on empty constantly because I couldn't say no long enough to refill. This depletion was permanent, not tired from a busy week depletion, dying slowly from years of giving everything away depletion. The kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix because it's not about rest. It's about having no boundaries protecting your energy. Boundary-less pattern 8, relationship distortion. My lack of boundaries created distorted relationships. People didn't know the real me. They knew the accommodating, boundaryless version of me, and they built their expectations around my boundarylessness. When I was always available, people expected constant availability. When I always said yes, people expected me to continue saying yes. When I always helped, people expected me to always help. My boundarylessness had trained people to expect I had no limits. And when I occasionally couldn't do something, when capacity was literally impossible, people were surprised, disappointed, even angry. But you always do this. because I'd created relationship dynamics based on having no boundaries, and those dynamics were unsustainable but expected. These 8 patterns: automatic yes, inability to articulate needs, overfunctioning, people-pleasing, resentment accumulation, identity loss, energy depletion. Relationship distortion had created a life that looked generous from the outside, but felt like slow suicide from the inside. Sitting in my car that day, crying after saying yes to organizing a baby shower I didn't want to organize, I saw all of this clearly. I wasn't living my life. I was living everyone else's life. I wasn't myself. I was whoever others needed me to be. I wasn't happy. I was performing happiness while dying inside. And I realized I can't keep living this way. Something has to change. And that something is me. I have to learn to say no. I have to set boundaries, even if it makes people uncomfortable. Even if people are disappointed. Even if I lose relationships built on my boundarylessness. Because continuing to live without boundaries wasn't generosity, it was self-destruction. That realization was the beginning of everything changing. The day after my car breakdown, I did something terrifying. I said no. For maybe the first time in my adult life, I said no without explanation, justification, or apology. A colleague asked me to cover her shift at the weekend volunteer event we both worked at. My automatic response started forming. Of course, happy to help, but I stopped myself. And instead, I said something that felt impossible. No, I can't do that. She looked surprised. Oh, okay, is everything all right? And here's where I would normally backtrack, explain, justify, and probably end up saying yes anyway. But instead, I said, yes, everything's fine. I just can't cover the shift. The conversation ended. She found someone else. The world didn't end. Nothing terrible happened. I'd said no, and it was survivable. That first no was terrifying but revelatory, because I learned no is a complete sentence. It doesn't require explanation. It doesn't require justification. It doesn't require apology. No is enough. Encouraged by this first success, I started systematically learning to set boundaries in every area of my life. Boundary 1, the pause before yes. I created a new rule: never say yes immediately to any request. Always pause. Even if the pause is just, let me check my calendar and get back to you. This pause gave me time to evaluate whether I wanted to say yes instead of automatically saying yes. When anyone asked for anything, I responded, let me think about that and get back to you. Not forever, just enough time to check. Do I have capacity? Do I want to do this? Does this align with my priorities? Can I say yes without resentment? This pause transformed everything. Because my automatic yes reflex couldn't engage, I'd created space between request and response. Space where I could evaluate honestly instead of responding automatically. Boundary 2, the no without explanation. I practiced saying no without justifying why. Just no, I can't do that. Not no because I'm busy and also I have this thing and really I'm overwhelmed, and just no. This was terrifying at first. I felt like I owed everyone explanations, but I learned explanations create negotiation opportunities. When you explain why you're saying no, people can argue with your reasons. Oh, but this won't take long. But you could just, but I really need. But no, I can't do that is complete. No negotiation opening. No justification to debate. Just a clear, firm no. I practiced this repeatedly. Can you take on this project? No, I can't. Can you help me move? No, I'm not available. Can you host dinner? No, not this time. Every no without explanation was terrifying, but every one got easier. Boundary 3, the letting people be disappointed. I had to accept that setting boundaries would disappoint people. People who were used to me saying yes would be disappointed when I said no. And I had to be okay with that. This was the hardest boundary, because I'd spent my life avoiding others' disappointment. But I learned other people's disappointment is their emotion to manage, not mine to prevent. I can't control their feelings. I can only control my boundaries. When I said no and someone was visibly disappointed, my instinct was to immediately say yes to fix their disappointment. But I learned to sit with their disappointment without fixing it. I understand you're disappointed, but I'm not available for that. This boundary, letting people be disappointed without rescuing them from their disappointment by sacrificing myself, was revolutionary. It meant their emotions were theirs, not mine to manage by destroying my boundaries. Boundary 4, the capacity-based decision-making. I created a clear framework for deciding what to say yes to. Before agreeing to anything, I asked 3 questions. Do I have actual capacity for this? Not could I squeeze it in if I sacrifice myself, but actual sustainable capacity? Do I want to do this? Not should I want to, or would a good person want to? Do I genuinely want to? Does this align with my priorities? Is this how I want to spend my limited time and energy? If the answer to all 3 wasn't yes, I said no. This framework removed guilt. I wasn't saying no because I was selfish. I was saying no because I had clear criteria. No capacity, no genuine desire, or misalignment with priorities meant no. Clear and objective. Boundary 5, the equal partnership expectation. I stopped over-functioning in relationships. I started expecting others to carry equal weight. In friendships, I stopped being the only one who planned everything. I started saying, I planned last time. Would you like to plan this time? If people wanted to spend time with me, they could put in effort too. At work, I stopped covering for everyone. When colleagues asked me to do their work, I said, I have my own deadlines. You'll need to find another solution. If the work was truly urgent, I said, I can help this time, but this can't be regular. In family, I stopped hosting everything. When holiday planning discussions started, I said, I've hosted the last 3 years. Someone else's turn. If no one volunteered, I said, then we'll do something low-key this year. This expectation of equal partnership initially created discomfort. People were used to me over-functioning, but it also revealed who respected boundaries and who only wanted relationships where I did all the work. Boundary 6, the relationship pruning. As I set boundaries, some relationships ended. People who only wanted me when I had no boundaries disappeared when I started protecting myself, and I had to accept this. Friends who only called when they needed something stopped calling when I stopped being endlessly available. Colleagues who relied on me to do their work became distant when I stopped covering for them. Family members who expected me to accommodate everything got upset when I started saying no. This was painful, but it was also clarifying. These relationships weren't real. They were built on my boundarylessness. When I set boundaries, these relationships revealed themselves as one-sided. And losing one-sided relationships isn't loss, it's liberation. The people who stayed, who respected my boundaries, who adjusted their expectations, who reciprocated effort, those relationships deepened because they were built on mutual respect, not on my self-sacrifice. Boundary 7, the self-prioritization practice. I started deliberately prioritizing myself, scheduling time for my own needs, protecting time for rest, hobbies, and activities I enjoyed. Saying no to others' requests when they conflicted with my own priorities. This felt wrong initially, like selfishness, but I learned you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give to others when you're depleted. Self-care isn't selfish. It's essential for sustainable giving. I blocked off time on my calendar for myself, non-negotiable time. When people asked for that time, I said, I'm not available then. I didn't explain that I was not available because I was taking care of myself. I just protected the time. This self-prioritization slowly refilled me. The constant depletion decreased. The energy started returning because I was finally protecting space for myself. Boundary 8, the boundary maintenance consistency. Setting boundaries once isn't enough. Boundaries require consistent maintenance. People test boundaries. They push. They try to return to old patterns. I had to consistently reinforce boundaries. When people who'd known boundaryless me started expecting boundaryless behavior again, I had to reinforce, I know I used to do that, but I don't anymore. When people push back on boundaries, I had to stay firm. I understand you're disappointed, but this is my boundary. This consistency was exhausting initially, but it became easier because consistent boundaries train people. They learn you mean it. They adjust expectations. They stop pushing, but only if you're consistent. After 2 years of deliberately setting and maintaining boundaries, my life looked completely different. Not bigger or more impressive, smaller and more mine. I had fewer commitments, but they were commitments I actually wanted. I had fewer relationships, but they were deeper and reciprocal. I had more time for myself, more energy, more sense of self. My life was mine again, and the resentment was gone, because I wasn't saying yes when I meant no anymore. I wasn't over-functioning. I wasn't people-pleasing. I was living with boundaries, and that changed everything. After transforming my life through boundaries, I developed what I call the boundary framework. This is the system that helps you set and maintain boundaries that protect your life without drowning in guilt. The framework has 7 components, and each one is essential. Component 1, the boundary audit. You need to identify specifically where you lack boundaries, where you're saying yes when you mean no, where you're accommodating at your expense, where you need boundaries you don't have. The practice. Complete these prompts multiple times. I say yes when I mean no to these types of requests. Example. I say yes when I mean no to taking on extra work projects. I overfunction in this relationship by doing X. Example. I overfunction with my friend Sarah by always planning our time together, checking in on her constantly, and never asking for support. I accommodate others at my expense in this area. Example. I accommodate my family by hosting every holiday despite being exhausted and wanting someone else to host. I need a boundary around this. Example. I need a boundary around work hours. I need to stop responding to emails after 7 p.m. Write at least 15 examples. Get all boundaryless areas visible. My audit revealed 23 areas where I lacked boundaries. 23 ways I was giving myself away. Component 2, the boundary priority identification. You can't set all boundaries simultaneously. You need to prioritize which boundaries to establish first. The practice. From your audit, identify. Which boundaryless pattern is costing you the most? Which creates the most resentment, depletion, or harm? Which boundary would create the most positive impact if established? Which boundary feels most achievable to start with? Choose your top 3 priority boundaries. Start with these. My priorities. 1. Stop saying automatic yes to work projects. 2. Stop overfunctioning in friendships. 3. Establish work hours boundary. These 3 would create the biggest impact. Component 3. The clear boundary statement. For each priority boundary, create a clear, specific boundary statement, not vague, specific and concrete. The practice. Write boundary statements in this format. My boundary is specific statement of what you will and won't do. Example. My boundary is I don't take on work projects without evaluating capacity first. I say, let me check my workload and get back to you to all project requests. Example, my boundary is, I plan social activities with friends alternately. If I planned last time, they plan next time. Example, my boundary is, I don't check or respond to work email after 7 p.m. or on weekends except emergencies. Clear statements make boundaries concrete and easier to enforce. Component 4, the no script practice. You need practice language for saying no because in the moment, your automatic yes will try to take over. Scripts help. The practice. Write and practice scripts for your priority boundaries. Basic no. No, I can't do that. No with appreciation. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I can't take that on. No with alternative. I'm not available, but have you tried asking X? No with boundary reinforcement. As I mentioned, I don't do X anymore. No to pushback. I understand you're disappointed, but my answer is still no. Practice these scripts. Say them out loud. Make them comfortable in your mouth, so when you need them, they're accessible. I practice scripts for 30 days before using them in real situations. The practice made the actual no's much easier. Component 5, the guilt management strategy. Setting boundaries creates guilt. You need strategies to manage that guilt without abandoning your boundaries. The practice. When guilt arises after setting a boundary, use these tools. Reality check. Is this boundary unreasonable, or am I just not used to having boundaries? Usually boundaries feel wrong only because they're new. Consequence assessment. What happens if I maintain this boundary? What happens if I abandon it? Maintaining might disappoint someone. Abandoning destroys you. Self-compassion statement. I'm allowed to have boundaries. My needs matter. Protecting myself isn't selfish. Time perspective. Will I regret maintaining this boundary or abandoning it? You never regret boundaries. You regret abandoning them. These tools manage guilt without making you abandon necessary boundaries. Component 6, the boundary communication method. How you communicate boundaries matters. Clear, firm, and calm communication gets better results than defensive or apologetic communication. The practice. When communicating boundaries, use this method. State the boundary clearly. I'm not available for that. If pushed, repeat without elaborating. As I said, I'm not available. Don't justify or explain. Explanations create negotiation opportunities. Stay calm and firm, not angry or defensive, just clear. End the conversation if needed. I've given you my answer. I need to go now. This method communicates that your boundary is non-negotiable while remaining respectful. Component 7, the boundary maintenance system. Boundaries require ongoing maintenance. You need a system to maintain them consistently. The practice. Create a boundary maintenance system. Weekly boundary check-in. Every Sunday ask, did I maintain my boundaries this week? Where did I struggle? What do I need to reinforce? Monthly boundary review. Are my current boundaries working? Do I need new boundaries? Do any need adjustment? Accountability partnership. Tell someone about your boundaries. Ask them to support you in maintaining them. Boundary violation tracking. When you violate your own boundaries, document why. What triggered the violation? How can you prevent it next time? This system prevents boundary erosion over time, keeps you accountable to maintaining boundaries you set. These 7 components create a complete system for identifying where you need boundaries, prioritizing which boundaries to set first, creating clear boundary statements, practicing no's, managing guilt, communicating boundaries effectively, and maintaining boundaries consistently. Now you understand how to set and maintain boundaries. Let me give you the exact action plan to start protecting your life today. Action 1. Complete your boundary audit this week. Use all 4 prompts. Write at least 15 examples of where you lack boundaries, where you say yes when you mean no, where you overfunction, where you accommodate at your expense, where you need boundaries. Get all boundaryless areas visible. Action 2. Identify your top 3 priority boundaries. From your audit, choose the 3 boundaries that would create the biggest positive impact if established. The 3 areas where lack of boundaries is costing you most. Write them specifically. Action 3. Create clear boundary statements for your priorities. For each priority boundary, write, "My boundary is," specific statement. Make it concrete and specific, not vague. This gives you clear boundaries to implement. Action 4. Write your no scripts. For your priority boundaries, write specific scripts for saying no. Basic no. No with appreciation. No with alternative. No to pushback. Write them out. Practice saying them out loud. Make them comfortable. Action 5. Set one boundary this week. Choose the easiest of your 3 priorities. Implement it this week. When the situation arises, use your script. Say no. Set the boundary. Just once. Prove to yourself it's survivable. Action 6. Create your guilt management plan. Write out the 4 guilt management tools: reality check, consequence assessment, self-compassion statement, time perspective. Put them where you'll see them. Use them when guilt arises after setting boundaries. Action 7. Practice the pause before yes. Starting today, never say yes immediately to requests. Always pause. Let me check my calendar. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. Create space between request and response. Use that space to evaluate honestly. Action 8. Identify one relationship where you overfunction. Choose one relationship where you consistently give 90% while they give 10%. This week, pull back slightly. Don't plan everything. Don't check in first. Don't carry all responsibility. See what happens when you stop overfunctioning. Action 9. Schedule self-priority time this week. Block off time on your calendar for yourself. Non-negotiable time. At least 2 hours. When anyone asks for that time, practice saying, "I'm not available then." Protect time for yourself. Action 10. Write your boundary commitment statement. Write, "I commit to setting boundaries that protect my time, energy, and well-being. I commit to saying no when I mean no. I commit to letting people be disappointed rather than destroying myself. I commit to equal partnerships rather than overfunctioning. I commit to prioritizing myself. My needs matter." Boundaries aren't selfish. They're essential. Sign it. Date it. Action 11. Tell one person about your boundary work. Share with someone you trust. "I'm learning to set boundaries. I've realized I say yes when I mean no constantly. I'm working on protecting myself through boundaries. I might need support as I practice." Create accountability. Action 12. Start your boundary journal. Get a notebook. Title it Boundary Journal. Document weekly. Boundaries I set this week. How it felt. How people responded. Struggles I had. Guilt that arose. How I managed it. Progress I'm making. This tracking shows your boundary development over time. Action 13. Prepare for relationship changes. Accept that some relationships may end as you set boundaries. People invested in your boundarylessness may leave. That's okay. Write, "Relationships built on my self-sacrifice aren't real relationships. Losing one-sided relationships is liberation, not loss. The right people will respect my boundaries." Action 14. Schedule your weekly boundary check-in. Put a reminder on your calendar every Sunday. Title it Boundary Check-in. Use this time to review. Did I maintain my boundaries this week? Where did I struggle? What do I need to reinforce next week? This weekly practice maintains boundaries. Action 15. Practice saying no out loud. Right now, practice saying no. Say it 5 times out loud. No, I can't do that. No, I'm not available. No, that doesn't work for me. Make the word comfortable in your mouth. Remove the fear from the sound of it. Practice until no feels possible. Now, some of you are thinking, but setting boundaries will make people think I'm selfish. I'll lose relationships. People will be hurt or angry. I'll be seen as difficult. Here's my answer. People who respect you will respect your boundaries. People who need you to have no boundaries are using you. If setting boundaries ends relationships, those relationships were one-sided anyway. Better to lose user relationships than to lose yourself to maintain them. Yes, setting boundaries might disappoint people, but living without boundaries definitely destroys you. Choose temporary disappointment over permanent self-destruction. Let me tell you where I am now, 6 years after I started setting boundaries. I'm 40 years old. I have clear boundaries in every area of my life. I say no regularly without guilt. I protect my time, energy, and well-being. I have fewer commitments, but they're commitments I actually want. I have fewer relationships, but they're deeper, reciprocal, and built on mutual respect. My life is mine. I'm not exhausted from constant giving. I'm not resentful from accommodation. I'm not lost under layers of people-pleasing. I'm not performing for others. I'm living for myself. And paradoxically, that makes me more available for genuine giving, because I give from fullness now, not from depletion. 6 years ago, I was 34 and dying from lack of boundaries, saying yes to everything, over-functioning in every relationship, people-pleasing constantly, accumulating resentment, losing myself, depleting completely, building relationships on my self-sacrifice, living for everyone except myself. Today, I'm 40 with strong boundaries protecting my life. I say no clearly and without guilt. I maintain equal partnerships. I prioritize myself. I protect my energy. I've pruned relationships built on my boundarylessness. I'm myself instead of whoever others need me to be. Here's what I learned. Boundaries aren't selfish. Boundaries are essential. The word no isn't rude, it's honest. Protecting yourself isn't wrong, it's necessary. And people who need you to have no boundaries don't respect you, they use you. Most people spend their lives unable to say no, building boundaryless lives, giving themselves away completely, accommodating everyone except themselves, and wondering why being so generous makes them feel so terrible. 6 years ago, I was one of those people, saying yes when I meant no, sacrificing myself constantly, believing boundaries were selfish, dying slowly from self-abandonment. Today, I know boundaries saved my life, not metaphorically, literally. I was dying from lack of boundaries, and learning to say no brought me back to life. Right now, you're probably living without adequate boundaries, saying yes when you mean no, accommodating at your expense, over-functioning in relationships, people-pleasing, accumulating resentment, losing yourself, depleting completely. And you probably believe this is what good people do, that boundaries are selfish, that saying no makes you difficult, that protecting yourself is wrong, that others' needs matter more than yours. But that belief is destroying you. Every yes when you mean no is self-betrayal. Every accommodation at your expense is self-abandonment. Every time you prioritize others at the cost of yourself, You teach people your needs don't matter, and eventually you believe it too. But you can change this. Starting today, you can complete your boundary audit, identify your priorities, create boundary statements, practice saying no, set one boundary this week, create space between request and response, stop over-functioning, let people be disappointed, prioritize yourself. It will feel wrong at first. Setting boundaries when you've never had them feels selfish. Saying no when you've always said yes feels difficult. Protecting yourself when you've always sacrificed feels uncomfortable. But it's not wrong. It's right. It's not selfish. It's essential. It's not difficult. It's honest. And the discomfort of setting boundaries is temporary. The destruction from living without them is permanent. 6 years ago, I made a choice. Keep living without boundaries and die slowly, or start setting boundaries and reclaim my life. I chose boundaries, and my life transformed completely. I went from overwhelmed and resentful to peaceful and fulfilled, from exhausted and depleted to energized and full, from lost and performing to grounded and authentic, from living for everyone else to living for myself, all because I learned to say no. The word no is powerful. It's complete. It's honest. It's necessary. And learning to say it will transform your life more than almost anything else you can do. You deserve boundaries. Your time matters. Your energy matters. Your needs matter. You matter. And protecting yourself through boundaries isn't selfish. It's survival. Say no. Set boundaries. Protect yourself. Disappoint people. Lose one-sided relationships. Prioritize yourself. Reclaim your life. 6 years ago, I was boundaryless and dying. Today, I have boundaries and I'm alive. Start saying no. Start today. No. Practice it. Mean it. Use it. Your life is waiting.